In modern dating, one of the most misunderstood truths is this: attraction does not grow because someone is always present, it grows because someone is not. The human mind does not crave what it can access at any moment, it craves what feels just out of reach. When availability is unlimited, curiosity dies. When presence is constant, imagination shuts down, desire needs space to breathe, and absence is the oxygen that keeps it alive. Think about how the mind works. When something is rare, the brain assigns it value. When something is always there, the brain stops noticing it. This is not cruelty or manipulation, it is basic psychology. In dating, men who are always texting, always calling, always checking, and unintentionally communicate that they have nothing else demanding their attention. Even if their intentions are pure, the signal received is low priority energy. And attraction is extremely sensitive to perceived priority. Absence creates mental engagement. When someone isn't constantly present, the mind fills the gap. Thoughts begin to wander. What is he doing? Why hasn't he reached out? When will I see him again? That internal dialogue is not happening when someone is overly available. Mystery disappears when everything is explained, announced, and predictable. And without mystery, desire fades into familiarity. This is why limited interaction often feels more intense than frequent contact. Short, meaningful encounters leave emotional residue. The moment ends, but the feeling lingers. The mind replays it. It anticipates the next one. In contrast, constant communication creates emotional saturation. There is no anticipation because nothing is missing. And when nothing is missing, nothing is desired. Many men believe effort means presence, being there all the time, proving interest, showing reliability early, but effort without restraint becomes pressure. It silently asks for validation, response, reassurance, and desire does not respond well to need. Desire responds to autonomy. When a man has a full life, strong direction, and boundaries around his time, his absence is not strategic, it's natural. He isn't pulling away to create attraction. He's simply not orbiting anyone else's world. Absence also signals emotional stability. A man who doesn't panic when there's silence shows inner control. He doesn't rush to fill gaps with words. He doesn't chase clarity at the cost of self-respect. That calm detachment is often interpreted as confidence, even when it's simply self-containment. And confidence is attractive because it suggests strength without display. Importantly, absence is not neglect. It is not ghosting, manipulation, or coldness. It's the difference between being intentional and being constantly accessible. When presence is chosen rather than automatic, it carries weight. When attention is given selectively, it feels valuable. People tend to respect what feels earned more than what is freely handed out. In modern dating culture, where constant connection is possible, restraint has become rare, and rarity creates contrast. A man who doesn't flood the space stands out precisely because so many others do. His silence isn't empty, it's filled with purpose. And that purpose is felt even if it's never explained. This is why desire grows in absence, not because distance creates fantasy alone, but because it allows attraction to exist without being suffocated by familiarity. The space between moments comes where interest matures, curiosity deepens, and emotional energy gathers. If you want to be desired, don't aim to be constantly present, aim to be genuinely missed. One of the most uncomfortable truths for many men to accept is that emotional restraint often creates more attraction than emotional investment in the early stages. This does not mean being cold, careless, or disrespectful. It means not leading with attachment before desire has had time to form. When a man remains emotionally centered within himself, rather than pouring emotion outward too quickly, he communicates something powerful. Without saying a word, he is not seeking validation. Emotional detachment is often misunderstood as lack of interest, but in reality it signals self-sufficiency. A man who does not rush to emotionally anchor himself to a woman shows that his sense of identity, confidence, and worth are not dependent on her response. That independence is deeply attractive because it suggests strength. Attraction grows toward what feels solid, not what feels needy. When men emotionally overinvest early, constant reassurance, deep emotional sharing, quick attachment, they unknowingly flip the polarity. Instead of being someone she wants to lean into, they become someone leaning toward her. That shift changes how desire functions. Desire thrives when there is tension, not when everything is emotionally laid out on the table. Emotional detachment preserves that tension. This detachment also allows emotions to grow organically rather than being forced. When feelings are rushed, they often feel artificial or heavy. But when a man allows emotional connection to unfold slowly, each interaction gains weight. Silence between moments becomes meaningful rather than awkward. There is room for curiosity instead of emotional saturation. Another critical aspect is emotional predictability. When a man's emotional responses are too predictable, always available, always affirming, always responsive, the dynamic becomes flat. Emotional restraint introduces uncertainty, and uncertainty fuels attention. The mind engages more deeply when it cannot fully anticipate emotional outcomes. This is not about manipulation. It is about not oversharing emotional intent before it is reciprocated. Emotional detachment also protects a man's boundaries. When he does not emotionally overextend, he is less likely to tolerate disrespect, inconsistency, or misalignment. This quiet selectiveness communicates standards, and standards are attractive because they imply self-respect. A man who is willing to walk away emotionally if things don't align is perceived as valuable, not disposable. There is also a biological component at play. Emotional restraint often triggers pursuit because it mirrors how desire historically functioned, through gradual bonding rather than instant emotional access. When access is earned over time, it feels more meaningful. Emotional availability becomes a reward rather than an expectation, and people instinctively value what must be earned. Importantly, emotional detachment does not mean suppressing emotions. It means regulating them. It means choosing when and where to express emotional depth rather than spilling it everywhere. A man who can feel deeply without being ruled by those feelings demonstrates emotional mastery. That mastery is far more attractive than emotional excess. In modern dating, where oversharing and instant emotional intimacy are common, restraint stands out. A man who remains grounded, calm, and emotionally self-contained creates a sense of stability. That stability invites desire because it feels safe without being boring, strong without being controlling. When emotional energy is conserved instead of constantly expressed, it gains intensity. And intensity, when revealed at the right moment, leaves a lasting impression. Desire grows when emotion is guided by discipline, not impulse. One of the most misunderstood dynamics in modern dating is how access shapes attraction. Many men believe that more availability equals more connection, and more connection equals more desire. But desire does not work on a linear scale. It responds to contrast, scarcity, and perceived value. When access to a man feels limited, not artificially restricted, but naturally scarce, it changes how he is perceived. Scarcity forces attention, and attention fuels desire. When a man is always available, always responding, always initiating, his presence becomes predictable. Predictability dulls emotional and sexual tension. The nervous system relaxes too much. Desire needs a slight edge of uncertainty to stay alive. Scarcity introduces that edge without drama. It creates space for imagination to operate, and imagination is where attraction quietly intensifies. Limited access communicates that a man has a full life outside the relationship. Not a fabricated business, but a real sense of direction. When a man's time is naturally occupied by purpose, discipline, and priorities, his availability becomes selective. This selectiveness is interpreted as value. People assume that what is scarce must be worth something. They lean in not because they are deprived, but because they sense substance. Scarcity also prevents emotional saturation. When interactions are too frequent, they lose impact. Conversations blur together. Moments become forgettable. But when time passes between encounters, each interaction carries more weight. The nervous system has time to reset. Anticipation builds. The mind replays past moments and projects future ones. That mental engagement deepens attachment far more than constant contact ever could. Another important layer is how scarcity protects polarity. Polarity thrives when each person maintains their own center. When a man does not orbit emotionally or behaviorally around a woman, he remains grounded. He is not pulled into reactive patterns. That groundedness creates a sense of stability that feels attractive because it contrasts with emotional volatility. Scarcity reinforces that stability by preventing overexposure. Scarcity also allows a woman's desire to self-generate. When a man constantly initiates, she never has to feel the impulse to reach out. Desire becomes passive. But when access is not guaranteed, desire activates internally. She notices the absence. She wonders. She reaches. That internal activation is crucial because desire that arises from within is always stronger than desire that is chased into existence. Importantly, this dynamic is not about withholding affection as a tactic. It is about not giving before alignment is established. When a man offers too much too soon, time, emotion, attention, he collapses the process. Scarcity allows desire to unfold naturally rather than being rushed or forced. It respects the pacing of attraction rather than trying to control it. Scarcity also filters relationships. A man who does not make himself endlessly accessible will quickly see who is genuinely interested and who is merely enjoying convenience. This clarity saves emotional energy. It keeps him from investing in dynamics that lack depth, and that discernment itself is attractive because it signals maturity. At a deeper level, scarcity restores self-respect. When a man values his own time, others follow. He does not need to announce his worth. It is demonstrated through his boundaries. Those boundaries create a frame where attraction can grow without resentment or imbalance. Desire does not grow in abundance, it grows in space. Another uncomfortable truth many men resist is this: fantasy thrives in emotional space, not emotional flooding. When a man constantly reassures, explains, validates, and emotionally services a woman, he believes he is building security. In reality, he is often killing mystery. And without mystery, fantasy dies. Desire needs room to breathe, and emotional distance, when healthy and grounded, creates that room. Fantasy is not built from knowing everything about someone. It is built from what is not fully known. When a man reveals his entire emotional world too quickly, when he narrates his feelings in real time, when he over-communicates his intentions and insecurities, there is nothing left for the imagination to work with. The mind stops reaching forward. It settles, and when it settles too early, attraction fades into familiarity. Emotional distance does not mean coldness or indifference. It means emotional self-containment. A man who can feel deeply without leaking constantly demonstrates inner strength. He experiences emotion without becoming ruled by it. That restraint signals control. Control creates safety. And safety, paradoxically, allows desire to intensify rather than collapse. When a man is emotionally centered, he does not seek validation through constant reassurance. He is not asking, are we okay? Every time the mood shifts, he trusts the process. That trust transfers. It relaxes pressure. Pressure is the enemy of desire. Emotional distance removes pressure by removing the need to manage emotions moment by moment. This distance also allows fantasy to personalize itself. When a woman is not constantly fed emotional content, she fills the gaps with her own interpretations. She projects meaning. She assigns depth. She builds stories internally. Those stories often amplify attraction far beyond what deliberate effort could produce. What she imagines feels more powerful than what is explained. Another overlooked aspect is that emotional distance preserves polarity. Polarity requires difference. When emotional expression becomes symmetrical, same intensity, same vulnerability, same pacing, the dynamic flattens. Emotional distance keeps the masculine frame intact. It anchors the interaction. The man becomes the emotional constant rather than the emotional echo. Over-validation often stems from fear of loss, fear of abandonment, fear of being misunderstood. But fear-driven communication weakens presence. Emotional distance, when rooted in self-trust, communicates abundance. It says, I am connected, but I am not dependent. That message is felt at a nervous system level. It stabilizes attraction because it removes desperation from the equation. Emotional distance also creates contrast during intimacy. When a man is not emotionally available at all times, moments of closeness feel earned and intense. His attention becomes meaningful because it is not automatic. When he opens emotionally, it lands with impact. Emotional restraint makes emotional moments rare, and rarity increases value. This dynamic also protects long-term desire. Many relationships fail not because of conflict, but because of emotional overfamiliarity. When nothing is left unexplored, desire has nowhere to go. Emotional distance keeps a relationship alive by keeping curiosity alive. It allows both people to continue discovering rather than consuming each other. Ultimately, emotional distance is not withdrawal. It is discipline. It is choosing not to collapse into someone else emotionally just to feel close. It is allowing desire to rise instead of trying to manufacture it through words. Attraction does not deepen through constant emotional exposure. It deepens through emotional restraint paired with presence. One of the deepest mistakes modern men make in dating is confusing attachment with attraction. Attachment feels comforting. It feels loyal. It feels safe. But attraction does not respond to attachment the way comfort does. In fact, excessive attachment slowly erodes desire. What keeps desire alive is not how tightly you hold on, but how lightly you can remain connected without losing yourself. Non-attachment does not mean you don't care. It means you are not emotionally hostage to outcomes. You enjoy connection without needing it to define your identity. When a man is attached to results, texts, reassurance, labels, consistency, his behavior changes, he becomes reactive, he monitors shifts in tone, he overcorrects, and those micro adjustments signal insecurity long before words do. A non-attached man moves differently. He is present but not gripping, interested but not anxious, engaged but not dependent. That emotional posture creates freedom in the interaction. And freedom is one of the most attractive sensations a person can feel around someone else. It removes pressure. It allows desire to arise organically instead of being managed. Attachment seeks certainty. Desire thrives on aliveness. When a man constantly tries to lock things down, define the relationship, secure exclusivity, confirm feelings, he unintentionally freezes the dynamic. What was fluid becomes rigid. What was exciting becomes predictable. Non-attachment keeps the dynamic alive by allowing it to evolve rather than forcing it into a container too early. This is why men who appear less emotionally invested often seem more attractive. It's not because they are careless. It's because they are not trying to control the emotional environment. They allow space for tension, curiosity, and movement. They don't chase clarity when ambiguity still carries energy. They let the connection breathe. Non-attachment also signals abundance. A man who is not afraid to lose a woman communicates that his life is already full. He is choosing her, not clinging to her. Choice feels powerful. Need feels heavy. Desire leans toward power, not pressure. When a woman senses that a man will be okay regardless of outcome, she feels safe exploring desire rather than managing his emotions. Another critical aspect is self-respect. Attachment often leads men to tolerate behavior they shouldn't, mixed signals, lack of effort, disrespect, because they fear loss. Non-attachment restores boundaries. A man who can walk away calmly is a man who is taken seriously. That seriousness creates attraction because it establishes consequences without threats. Non-attachment also keeps polarity intact during conflict. When disagreements arise, an attached man seeks immediate resolution to soothe anxiety. A non-attached man allows space. He does not chase emotional closure. That space forces reflection. It prevents emotional spirals, and it keeps respect intact even during tension. Over time, non-attachment sustains desire because it keeps identity intact. Desire fades fastest when two people collapse into one emotional unit. When individuality disappears, mystery disappears. Non-attachment preserves individuality. It allows both people to remain sovereign while still connected. That balance is rare, and rarity intensifies attraction. This is not about playing games. It is about internal orientation. A man who is non-attached does not withhold to manipulate. He simply does not overinvest prematurely. His calmness comes from inner stability, not strategy. When you stop needing desire to survive, desire starts moving toward you on its own. The final and most overlooked truth in this dynamic is that desire does not survive emotional negotiation. It survives self-respect. The moment a man begins negotiating for affection, explaining why he deserves effort, asking for consistency, justifying his needs, or trying to convince someone to value him, desire has already started leaking out of the interaction. Negotiation shifts the frame. It places the man in a position of persuasion rather than presence. Instead of being experienced, he is pleading to be evaluated, and attraction does not respond to arguments. It responds to energy, alignment, and consequence. When a man negotiates emotionally, he signals that his self-worth is dependent on approval rather than grounded internally. Self-respect removes the need for discussion. A self-respecting man does not announce boundaries, he lives them. He does not threaten to leave, he simply disengages when behavior no longer aligns. That quiet decisiveness is deeply unsettling in a world where most people overexplain themselves. And that unsettling quality creates respect before it creates desire. Desire grows when actions carry weight. When a man tolerates inconsistency, mixed signals, or disrespect while continuing to invest, his actions lose weight. There are no consequences. The dynamic becomes hollow. Self-respect restores gravity. It makes presence meaningful because absence becomes possible. And where absence is possible, desire stays awake. This also changes how communication feels. Instead of emotional processing sessions, interactions become cleaner, calmer, and more intentional. The man is not trying to be understood at all costs. He is expressing himself clearly and allowing others to respond as they will. That openness without attachment creates emotional maturity, which is far more attractive than emotional availability without boundaries. Self-respect also protects the nervous system. Emotional negotiation keeps the body in a state of tension, waiting, hoping, interpreting. Self-respect returns the body to neutrality. When a man knows he will walk away from what does not serve him, his nervous system settles. That calm presence is felt immediately. People respond to regulated energy far more than persuasive words. Another key layer is timing. Desire follows timing, not insistence. Emotional negotiation tries to speed things up, to force clarity, commitment, or reassurance before the connection is ready. Self-respect allows timing to unfold naturally. It accepts that not every connection is meant to deepen. That acceptance removes bitterness and preserves dignity. This does not mean a self-respecting man is emotionally closed. He can be warm, expressive, and affectionate, but he does not chase reciprocity. He notices it. He responds to it. And when it disappears, he does not argue with reality. He adjusts his investment accordingly. That responsiveness, rather than reactivity, keeps the dynamic honest. Long-term desire is sustained when both people feel they are choosing each other freely. Emotional negotiation poisons that choice by turning it into obligation. Self-respect keeps choice alive by allowing departure. And only when leaving is an option does staying carry meaning. Attraction is not earned through endurance or explanation. It is maintained through self-respect, consistency, and the courage to let go when alignment fades.